Hi, I'm Gabby.
And I'm Rowan. And welcome back to Nexus of Narratives,
where we use stories to bring people together across different belief systems. So today's episode is with Jeannie. So this is an episode I recorded virtually a little while back.
Yeah.
And so just as like a little bit of a preview of like what to expect with the conversation is Jeannie is a money coach, which is fun that she digs into.
Yeah, it's different. I never thought of a money coach in the way that she will talk about.
Yeah. So there's a lot of conversation about psychology, especially in relationship to money, which is really cool. And she shares her story in several different stories of like how she got into that, but then also touches on like friendships and family. Yeah.
Boundaries.
Mm-hmm. A lot of conversation about
lots of conversation about boundaries and relationships and her experience of being in a relationship with others.
Mm-hmm. I would say. Yeah. And I feel like this conversation, it has a slightly different flavor from other episodes that we have.
Definitely.
And so I think what's beautiful about that is it really is a demonstration of using Nexus of Narratives as a platform to have different beliefs, different viewpoints, different stories from different perspectives from people who are in different places of life. So it's not just a bunch of people who have gone through similar paths and are at similar places. So I think that's a really cool part of this episode too.
Yeah. And everyone goes through different hardships that don't all look the same, that still count.
Yeah.
And so like we get to see all of those different things here. Mm-hmm. I would say it definitely has a different flavor, but it was still grateful to have that flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love how you said that, like going through hardships and coming out of it differently. Like that's the beauty of like human existence is we all can experience, quote, the same thing and have a different experience. It's just as unique as we are as a person. So that's really awesome. Yeah. So some warnings. This isn't like a typical trigger warning one either, I would say.
Yeah, I would not say. I mean, I would say that always take care of yourself and listen to what your body or mind or spirit is saying when listening. And if there's things that are a trigger for you, that's completely legitimate. On an overall scale, like those kind of, those like regular ones that you see, abuse, harm, things like that, they don't come up as heavily. Maybe some emotional manipulation or things with emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some like loss. There's, talk about grief and, losing family to neurodegenerative disease. So that's a little flavor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like put your armor on for this one like some of the other ones.
Some of the other ones.
Yeah. So there might be a couple of tiny audio hiccups, but I'd say this was one of the better ones that we've done since transitioning out of the studio. And I promise we'll be in the studio again soon. But yeah, enjoy this episode with Jeannie, and we'll see you again in a week, next Monday, for our next regularly scheduled episode. Woo, woo, woo.
Hello. Welcome to the Nexus of Narratives. Jeannie, I'm so excited to share space with you and still in the early phases of our virtual episode. So I would love to first actually start off with, where are you?
I'm in the virtual realm. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just outside of Washington, D.C. in Bethesda, Maryland.
Amazing. Yeah. So, a pretty long ways from where I'm physically located. So I'm so grateful to have you join this space. And so I met you in a virtual networking space. And through that, we had a conversation, really connected, I felt like. And I just loved how you had created your life to follow this passion based out of challenging experiences. You're like, I am just so passionate about, financial freedom and supporting family and helping others to do the same. And I thought that was so beautiful. And so if you were to bump into someone on the road or anywhere, your setting of choice, and have a quick introduction, what would you share about yourself?
Well, when people ask me what I do is I try to give a definition, because I feel like when you're a trailblazer, you got to explain it. You can't, it's not like I'm an accountant. I'm not an accountant. But if I say something like money coach, people don't get that. They're like, what is that? So I've learned to call myself what I do, which is I'm a money expert and mental fitness guide for people who want to make a career change and for entrepreneurs, so they have that vital and stable cash that you need in order to run a business. And that's what I do. And then all of a sudden people go, oh, I get it. Even if they have no interest, they don't want to do a career change, they don't own a business, they get it. And that's, I feel like, rule number one: get your marketing down so crystal clear that people can't argue with you.
Yeah, truly. Whereas I find myself in this place, I even had a conversation with a friend this morning that they were like, oh, I'd love to, promote the work that you do. And how can I speak to potential referrals about how to connect with you and like what your area is. And I talked for way too long. Yeah, so I was like, I think that's a wonderful invitation to really trim down how I market my world and my work, just like you said, so that people get a crystal clear picture. So it's something that's a work in progress for me as well.
It's a work in progress for every business owner. Really your marketing, not to make this all about how does marketing work, but your marketing ultimately is, what people say about you. So it's not even what you say. So like when I think of you, Gabrielle, I'm like, oh, she's authentic. She does all this. Like, she's got a podcast. So like, that's concrete. People know what that is. I said, oh, but she likes to go deep. She's really looking for connectivity. And if you're somebody who's more on the surface, I don't want to make an introduction to you, because she also works, like helping people create change, whether it's individually or whether it's at a corporate level. And then as soon as I like pause on just like what you do and who you are in a few simple sentences, then people are like, oh, either like, but I'm really feely too, and I love deep conversations. Or if they're like, yeah, I would never, I don't care to tell you anything personal about me, then that would never be a referral for you. I'd be like, yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. Well, wonderful. I'm just going to borrow that. I might just like take that chunk, click play, and then.
Here's what Jeannie says about me.
Just let other people do it for me.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also love hearing the different kind of takes and perceptions on how I show up into a space. And for the first word to be authentic, what a joy. To me, that tells me I'm doing something right. So thank you for that.
Well, you strive for courageousness, which, when I think about Brené Brown, not to make this about somebody else completely, but I love when she did that book on words, and I'm totally slaughtering the whole book right now. But when she was talking about like, what do the words mean? And courageousness comes, I believe, from the French, which is the heart. And courageousness basically translate, it's our entire heart. And so when I think about the level of courageousness that you show up with, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is great. Finally. Because it's when people are surfacey or one note or have their own whatever barriers it is, just for a conversation, and we haven't even talked about business, then, it's okay. You can move on. But people who are willing to go a little deeper with you, I just think of it, I don't know if anybody's going to be seeing the video here, but it's like two hands finally get to connect. You don't have to make a whole story about it, but two hands are connecting. And that's really what people want. People want connection. They got to know you well enough to know who you are and what you can do, and then they can trust you.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the whole purpose of this.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate for those who are listening and not watching. I know we have a lot of people watching, but to describe hands coming together to create that connection is just absolutely perfect. And yes, the whole purpose of this is to demonstrate to people that even, let's say, on a virtual space where you meet with somebody in a virtual networking group, talk, I think this is our third time aside from a phone call,
It is.
that you can have really deep, meaningful conversations that can change the course of someone's life. You know, it affects my life for the better. And I always hope that my interactions with people help impact their lives for the better too. And to say it's possible to do that, whether you've known somebody for years or you just met them a few times, is that this is possible.
Yeah.
So with that, I would love to invite you to start wherever you would like to start on the story that you wanted to come here and share.
So I want to talk about my heart and how my heart became, you know, sort of the heart of money, which is taken basically from my mentor. She actually wrote a brilliant book called The Heart of Money, and she was talking about couples. But I want to talk about my heart and how it took me some time to heal. And then I was able to become a force that I am now as a business owner. So I feel like with my heart, it was fairly open, but it took a lot of beatings. And I think for those of us who are out there, we're like, yep. And I mean that professionally speaking, I've had some horrific bosses. I've had like just personal relationships that had not always worked out. And sometimes they were just friends, and they were just like, I find out later, they're really mean girls, and they were just like, so competitive in the worst ways, you know? So I would always try my best to kind of rise above it, but still it hurts. It hurts when people are mean to you and you're kind of like, okay, thank you. I'll keep moving forward without you. So one of the things that really helped heal my heart was having healthier, meaning not perfect, but healthier financial as well as emotional and time boundaries, because I feel like if we don't set the tone a little bit of how we want to be treated, like I noticed like during the pandemic, like, you know, we were all kind of forced to stay, 6 feet away, kind of roughly, depending on where you lived and, what you were experiencing. But anytime somebody would encroach upon that space, like that feeling of like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? What are you doing to me? And like, it would hurt my heart. And then realizing that like, you know what? I can't stop these people. They're going to do what they're going to do, whether they're wearing a mask or not. But I have the choice of wearing a mask. So I did that. And that helped my heart feel a lot better. And when I would see it, I would be like, as soon as I can go, I can step away. Or if I need to say something, be like, sir or ma'am, could you maybe just give me a second here? I'd appreciate it. I want you to be free in who you are, but I also need my space. So that's one of the things that I feel like kind of helps set the tone a little bit for your heart. But time is like the thing I feel like we're terrible at. And I am like, have been one of the worst. Like I have spent more time with my heart trying to fix other things, problems in the business, problems with connection, problems with other people. And I did not spend a lot of time taking care of myself in the way that I could have, like just slowing down and pausing. And I learned really through the pandemic again of like, remember, there was that period of time people would ask you like, hey, Gabriella, what are you doing? And you'd be like, not much. Guess what? The rest of the world was not much as well. Like there were times that we just kind of shut down, and my heart felt okay, but I didn't feel joyous. And I didn't realize it until it was like a little bit later in the pandemic that I wasn't experiencing joy. I could remember times I had, and I felt really bad for people who hadn't really experienced really any joy in their life. But I was like, whoa, I am missing joy, and I need to find a way back to joy. And that was a piece of my heart that I really needed to come back. And I noticed, like, if you will, we're all kind of mirror reflections of each other, that many people didn't have a lot of joy. And so from a time perspective, I might spend a little bit more time trying to cheer people up. And then realizing that kind of impacted my energy sometimes, because people were there to suck it up and like, oh, I really like you. You're full of energy. And I'm like, well, no, it's really joy. I'm really full of joy right now. And I can access that, which for a lot of people, I don't think they do. And then, getting into the money piece, like I always tell all my clients, it's ultimately your customer or client that will determine the value. So it doesn't matter if you're exclusive or you're high touch or you're this or what, it does not matter. It's what people think is it worth it to them? And that, of course, gets into your marketing and your messaging and who you really want to talk to. And again, I feel like through this process of life that I've learned that my heart, I have to protect. And I understand there's going to be people out there that are going to be hardcore. They're going to be intense. They're going to instantly start yelling, or maybe not instantly, but they're going to go. And, I can't control that. Kind of like, I can't control if you're going to wear a mask or not. Not that it matters at this point for me, but I can choose to protect myself and be like, okay, I see that you're upset, or I see that this is happening. I may no longer be interested in, further conversations, but, I feel like those things have helped heal my heart by recognizing the polarity of what I was receiving, forced me to really make a deeper choice of like, Jeannie, it's your life. Who do you want to spend time with? How do you want these conversations to go? How do you want the money to go? How would you like somebody to support you? How would you like to support somebody else? And that really shifted. And I wish I could say, oh, it was like overnight, Gabriella, I just decided to choose me. No, no, it was like constant failure of like, I don't know what I did wrong. And it was just people that I was trying to choose, hopefully having a good conversation with, wasn't so good. So I was like, oh, so it's good to be discerning. It's good to ask more questions. It's good to kind of maybe go a little bit further and then be like, we'll see if we want to do round 2. We want to see if we can go round 3, because I find with those folks, that helps me to feel like, okay, I got this. I know what's happening.
So let's dig into some of that. I heard a lot of really delightful little nuggets in there. Mm-hmm. A theme that I hear is especially around your heart and your time is the balance of openness, but also boundaries, and figuring out that balance of offering and opening your heart, nourishing yourself and others with your heart. And it's just like, I picture this openness for those who are just listening. I'm kind of like gesturing my hands outward, but then also this sort of protective boundary setting, which I think is a really hard balance to strike. So is there like a very specific time or moment that you would like to share, dig into, of discovering that, where you almost had to like advocate for yourself, is what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing you properly?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's like a few scenarios that are popping into my head as I'm thinking about this. I think the best thing I can say is when I made assumptions is where I goofed, is where I ended up being overextended and sort of like, hi, I'm here. And having somebody been like, well, I don't see the world the same way you do, and I'm not interested. And, I'm a highly competitive person, but I'm not going to tell you that because then I know you won't like me. Oh, okay. And also trusting people's words. I still feel like that Maya Angelou quote of like, the first time somebody tells you who they are, believe them. So there's been people I've met that they don't speak highly of themselves. They have like what I would call some self-esteem stuff going on, whatever that is. I don't try to define it and diagnose it. But if you speak poorly about yourself, you don't like your weight, you don't like the way you look, and then, everything's a comparison, then, no matter what I say, if it looks better, and I put this in big quotes, I'm doing air quotes right now. If it looks better, to them that you're doing better, you may not be, then they're going to, hold a grudge against you. And so I've just learned, like, people may be great on the first meeting, they may be great on the second, but if you're still hearing the stuff that's like bummer and down and, And I've also learned about time. I don't want to go too much into this, but I will share this. So I had a friendship, at least I thought it was like a budding friendship. I was very excited. I really liked this person, that we were just friends. And I didn't know until later how much they were lying to me. And they were saying things so we had a mutual friend that we knew. And again, I knew them, very gently, it was like a new kind of friendship. And I didn't realize that they were lying to me because they kept telling, our mutual friend, don't say anything, we're doing this, don't tell them. And I wouldn't have cared one way or the other. I didn't personally think it was something to even lie about. Like, do what you want to do in life. Like, life is short. I don't care that the two of you want to hang out, go for it. But what I learned is that I hadn't talked to them for a few weeks, and this other person. So I didn't know. So things had really intensified. They were like bestie friends and they were hanging out all the time and texting and da, 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 da. And then the relationship became sexual, which I didn't even know. I was like, oh, okay. Which I was fine with. I was like, hey, that's your life. So I hadn't talked to them in about 3 weeks. And then I reached out and said, hey, how you doing? And I got this very angry text because I was with this other person, the mutual friend, which I didn't know I didn't know this was a whole sexual thing. And they basically were like, I will never be your friend again. How dare you go behind my back? Only to find out this mutual friend basically said, oh no, it's been hot and heavy for weeks now. And I'm like, do you get it that this person's pulling your strings? This quote unquote mutual friend that you and I have. And they were like, no, it's going to be great. And I was like, okay, I'm signing off now. You can take care of yourself. It's all up to you. And I've been put in the doghouse by the other person. That's okay. I will not be asking to go back inside the house. I'm going to escape the yard. And the time thing was really the unique factor that I kind of figured everything out. And when I looked back and evaluated like my heart, because I like to approach, friendships and new business partnerships with openness, like, hi, it's nice to meet you. How are you? What's new? How can, anything. And when it's been a few weeks, I've learned to kind of pause for a second and go, it's been a few weeks. Anything new happening in your life? Pause. Don't say another word. Just to listen, just to see if they're going to share anything. Because if I hear two stories, I know something's up. Like I know it. And I don't have to know the whole details. It's not my business to know everything. But I just thought that's a really good takeaway for me, is to just pause. Do not assume the person's in the same place that you were in 3 months ago or 4 months ago or a year ago. A lot of things have changed. Like I just had a conversation with a really cool financial advisor. They're like, yeah, people get a 6-month financial advising plan and it changes because their life changes. I'm like, exactly.
And so have you always had that sort of like sense of advocacy for yourself to say, here's a boundary that I feel was crossed and this is where I draw the line? Or was like this situation with this friendship?
It was a little sad to me because it kind of came out of nowhere. I felt like I kind of got whacked across the face with it, because the way the sequence of events went out is that I recall was that I was friends with all of them, but I did not know the extent and the depth of this relationship because that was hidden from me. I hadn't talked to them in a few weeks and all was well the last time I talked to them. And then it was like 30 days later, I was dirt. And so one of the things that I learned was that if somebody's going to not see themselves as healthy or your equal or, anything like they bring to the table their goodness, whatever that is, like you don't have to be perfect, but whatever the goodness is that you're bringing, and they keep seeing themselves down here, that's a red flag. That's a big red flag when it comes to relationships, business or personal, because you're not on equal playing field. Number two, hearing things that were a little bit different or getting quizzed, like, well, don't you know this? I'm like, no, I talk about this with this person. I don't know anything about that. And like, instead of me like going, why does that matter? Why are you asking me this? Like really stepping up my boundaries a little bit. Instead, I was like, oh, I'm fine. All is well. And then the final part of just realizing it's been a few weeks, to not assume everything's golden. Don't assume it at all. And that has really served me, because now I have better conversations, better relationships, even, from a professional standpoint, because I just I'm listening. I'm seeing if there's a level of connection. I'm seeing if there's a level of energy. Is there a level of alignment? Do we still have the same goals, the same ideas, the same enthusiasm? Or is it like, woof? Because when it starts to go down, not that that's a terrible thing, but it is sometimes the only red flag you're going to see. And that was like the two big ones. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that moment of saying, oh, I was kind of what this situation, no matter how painful that might have been in those moments, to say what I really got out of that and what kind of shifted is what I'm hearing is this sense of awareness of not saying I'm not going to go out and build friendships again.
Right. That's silly. That's never not going to happen.
Right. But to say, oh, okay, here are some things that I can be a little bit more aware of. And how do you feel that has impacted like your friendships and relationships going forward?
So what has happened like going forward is I will tell them a couple stories of like, hey, I had what I thought was like an okay friendship, or was like an early on friendship. And this is what happened. And this is what I learned. What I learned is the following: like, they didn't really like themselves. They didn't like me, and I didn't know that. And then they got upset one day, and then they made it about me. And what I've heard from more folks, they go like, well, that sounds crazy. And I'm like, well, I agree. But my point is that, if you want to be friends, let's have some, maybe we'll just have, we'll be hangout friends, or maybe we're going to go do, I don't know, I want to say like meetup community thing together. That's great. Or maybe we can be a little bit closer. Like we can actually, you have a question about money and maybe I can answer it for you. Or maybe you need a referral for something and I can maybe give that to you. Or maybe you just need to talk and you just want somebody to listen for a few minutes. Maybe that I can give to you. But I've learned to just kind of slow down. Does it match? Is there a sync or a rhythm to this? Or is it just, doors closing in your face immediately? And you're like, what happened? What did I do? Am I crazy making here? What happened? This feels like a crazy making situation, only to find out later that, oh, the two of you have been lying. Okay. Now I get it. So
when you talk about like feeling alignment and feeling these things, in several different conversations, I've heard this theme of like what's happening in your body. So is there like a feeling in your body? I'm so glad you
said that. Yes. So for me, alignment is, it's that effervescent kind of feeling. Again, do you experience joy or not? But that sort of like, oh, it feels light. It feels quick. You can like, follow each other, kind of like rain on a window pane. Like you can literally trace each other's fingers like together. You're that connected. That feels more like alignment to me. And again, I'm not talking about sexual stuff. I'm not talking about romantic stuff. I'm talking about you speak and the other person goes, I hear exactly what you're saying, not what I only want to hear and see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you shared this story about this friendship that like dissolved, I can resonate with that. Actually, like it was shortly after the pandemic, I had a friendship that we were extremely close. I think probably the closest friendship I've ever had with somebody. And we're just coming back together now. We had a few years where we like separated as friends and had that kind of sensation of like, we just built on each other. Our friendship was extremely natural, very authentic. And for me, what I remember feeling was like, no matter how I show up in a moment, I know this person will accept me as I am and get me, and that I don't have to kind of like be performative or wear a mask that maybe I have to wear in other situations. And that sense of belonging in the heart of a friend was something that was so beautiful to experience. And then we had some like clashing of experiences. We recognized through some conversations more recently, we really didn't have the tools to healthily confront some of the differences that we were having. And we didn't know how to come through those differences in our friendship. And that ended up slowly pulling us apart from one another, because then what used to be this really authentic and whole and connected, as you said, like you could trace the water droplets, like it really felt like that. And we felt inseparable. Then all of a sudden, like there were walls being built up between our hearts. And then we didn't really know how to get through that. And we didn't really have the tools. And then all of a sudden we like didn't really have that safety within each other to confront that. And then coming back together more recently to be like, dang, I really miss the friendship that we had. Can we approach this differently this time? Can, like, here's where the challenges were. Like, we've both done a lot of work to grow, sense, and see transformation in each other. We're like, man, I really, really miss you.
Yeah.
And to be able to have that. And sometimes it's not like that. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, we're going our separate ways. And that was one of the trio of our friendship trio was one of them. We just went our separate ways and don't wish each other ill. We're just like, yeah, it's not working and that's fine. I wish you all the best in your life. And then to come back now with this friend, and instead of being like, I was upset with you years ago, to be like, I acknowledge how I didn't show up as my best self. And I don't know exactly what I said or what I did, but I'm sure I'd be mortified to be a fly on the wall of that old version of me. Right. And it can go all of the different ways. Yeah. So I really appreciate you saying that, because I did really feel that.
Yeah. And I feel like, no matter how bad the moment is, like you just said, you can continue with your heart, and you can continue, whether it's to reconnect or apologize, or just be like, this is a life lesson, I'll never act like this again. Or be like, you know what? I'm the dog that will escape the yard, and I'm going to be okay with that, because I'm not here for what now feels like a manipulative and abusive conversation that I didn't sign up for, and only to find out it's pretty rotten on the side of the fence. And I'm okay. Mm-hmm.
And no one direction better than the other.
Yeah.
Right. It's what is the best for the continued nurturement and growth of self in a way. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's amazing. And we'd also talked about, like, I want to make a big pivot for us here.
We're going to step into something else now.
Yeah. Let's take a dive into a different pool here.
Yeah, exactly.
We had talked so much about your passion for money. Yes. And supporting people in that, because of all of the things that money can represent in our world and take on its own kind of power over people in different ways. It's like, could you share a story about a time that really led you into that?
Yeah. Okay. So my money story is unique in the sense that I didn't go to college to become a financial major. Like, I didn't do that. My parents were good with money overall. I would say, like, they understood savings, investing, all that good stuff, but they had a very contentious divorce. And so that was part of my money story, is understanding how to exist between two people who were warring with money over a divorce. So, and I know a lot of us have had that. It doesn't have to be a lot of money either, but for them, it was a lot. They lost a lot of money fighting, but that was their choice. So, but basically what really kind of set it off is, I was married and life was going good. I was pretty good with the bills. And life was fine. And then I got to the point in my career that I was like, I think I have to start my own business, because every boss I've had has been really awful to deal with. Didn't matter if it was a man or a woman. They were all sort of emotionally abusive and manipulative. And, like, of course they don't want to promote you because you get all the work done. So it was like this, yin and yang of what I feel a lot of us as women do, is that we're very capable, so we can do a lot. But that isn't good if you want to get ahead. You don't want to do a lot. You got to learn how to, I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm not saying quietly quit your way through this and, quietly go on vacation or whatever. No, I'm just saying you have to learn to, I think, reprioritize and get your energy and look for the people who are going to mentor you and see you for who you are, not for somebody who just wants to abuse you. And I honestly, truly believe that all of these managers that I've had throughout my career had major mental health issues that were never treated, and that could have been, but they were never treated. And it was, so you're stuck with somebody who's like, what is this? And you're like, oh, so you have to leave. There's really no other way around it. Like, if HR can't fix it, because they won't, their boss goes, well, they're just, you need to be more patient. Then, you can only accept so much gaslighting. But so I was there running my first business, and it's still running, by the way, and it's doing great. And I decided to, do what I want to do, my first business. And I was actually doing pretty good. And then my mother got sick, and she got sick with Alzheimer's, and she eventually passed away from it. And it was like all within like a 2-year period, actually less than a 2-year period. It was just like everything kind of like fell, like the stairs came out from underneath the levels of the building. And, it was like kind of run for your life at the same time, finding out all the things that had happened and what was missing and what honestly didn't matter at this point. She was going to die.
Don't go anywhere just yet. We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment.
Thank you so much for listening. And just a quick plug is if you're enjoying this content and you want more, please join our growing community on Patreon. So tiers start at $1 a month for early release episodes. Sometimes I'll plug in some additional content there, and then $5 and $10 a month. So very affordable. Buy us a cup of coffee every month on Patreon.
I don't know, $5 doesn't necessarily cover coffee in some places.
Okay, well, coffee from somewhere.
Coffee.
Even though we'll make it here at home. But it's beans are still expensive too,
That's true. Coffee is coffee, even if it's just true.
And we're growing the community there. We have bonus content, so we'll continue the conversation here. Additional episodes, additional conversations that are put on there, opportunity to join live stream, Q&As, and then at the $10 a month level is an opportunity to join these recordings with us live as an online audience where you can even pop questions in the chat and such. So that's really awesome. Yeah. So Patreon's a really important way to support us, so I'd be really grateful to do that. And then also additional ways to engage is to go on the Nexus of Narratives website. So you can find a link to all the different ways to listen and support by going to www.nexusofnarratives.org. And also we're on social media. So
on social media, we have Instagram and Facebook, and there's also maybe some talks of getting a Discord started, kind of keep building that community and building the nexus of narratives, both in our videos and out. So if you're interested in a Discord, you can drop a little comment, let us know, and we're going to look into that.
Yeah, so let's see what the interest is. So if at any point you're like, oh, that sounds just interesting, I like having Discord communities, and definitely put your voice out there so that we know the interest. And last but not least, if you like what you hear in these conversations and would like to connect with me in particular for coaching and consulting, really focusing on building self-leadership, team leadership, or working in organizational consulting standpoint for how to navigate change management within your organization, build healthy and vibrant teams, I would love to support you. So you can connect with me through that channel of my personal website for my business, which is thenexusimpact.com or THENEXUSIMPACT.com. I always have to think if I'm spelling my own stuff correctly when I do that.
Really impressed.
Thank you.
So impressive.
Mentally visualizing it as I'm doing it. So plenty of ways to get involved and to support, from things that hopefully shouldn't feel like a very big outpouring to really robust ways to support. So always grateful for that. And thank you again for listening.
Thank you.
So it was like coming to terms with a lot of loss. We found out afterwards that after she passed away, that my mother's estate had unfortunately had been liquidated by another family member. And so we went to court and we lost. There was nothing we could do because they also delayed diagnosis. And therefore, we could not prove that this was done at an earlier date and time. But it was. That's when all this stuff happened. And again, when I talk about the betrayal piece, that's why I kind of talked a little bit about the two other friends that I was dealing with. This betrayal piece in particular, when it came to my mother and this other family member, was that, they did a lot of bait and switch. And my mother, I know when she was better, when she was more well, would cover for him. And we went, oh, okay. And it was a lie. But she would do that because she thought that was the right thing to do at the time because she was mentally incapacitated, even though we kept saying something was wrong. So So from 2011, started a business, doing okay. 2013, my mother finally passes away as we're kind of learning stuff along the way. And then it's like, there's no more veil. There's nothing else left. We can see the truth. We've got enough financial information to know exactly what wasn't done. And we're all like, oh my gosh. So I truly believe that terrible things happen to you in your life, not because you're a bad person or you deserve it. It's because it's something you're going to have to learn to get over. So I was on a mission around 2015, 2016 to really get past a lot of my own anger and my own grief, because it's heavy walking around when you are sick to your stomach. You don't know who to trust, and you don't like it when people are lying to you. Like, I'm one of those people like, somebody's lying to me? I do not like that. Other people are like, oh, it's fine. And I'm like, I get angry, because I don't like to be lied to. And I'm better with it now. I'm like, oh, you're not honest with me. Okay, I can see that now, and I can respect the fact that you're not being honest. But at that time, I was still and trying to protect my very wounded heart. So I'm also a dancer, and I was in just like an adult dance classes, like the social adult dance classes. And I walked in to my dance studio one day, and there was a flyer on the wall for Dance and Money. Of course, natural now, but at the time, this is a breadcrumb I had no idea was coming my way. I just said, oh, it's for 4 days and it's 2.5 hours away. And I was like, I think I should go. And I went, and I loved it. I met my very first emotional and behavioral money coach. So when things are unfair or things are harder than they need to be in life, sometimes it's that kind of behavioral money coaching that we all we all need to kind of get past a situation. Because one of the little secrets about emotions and money is that if you're very angry and you're still grieving a loss, it could be a past relationship, could be a death, it could be a business, it could be anything, you might have more debt than the average person. Why? Because part of that debt is part of your own money psychology, meaning I want to get ahead, but I don't have enough energy. I have to absorb all these extra debts because no one else will help me. I got screwed because I wasn't paying attention to the fine details, or I'm so overwhelmed, I didn't know what else to do. So I did this, and now I've got more debt, right? So I learned very quickly to be like, okay, this is the stuff that needs to change. And so I signed up for a year of professional development for money coaching. And I went, oh, wow, this is really cool. I really like this. And I decided I wanted to have a business. And then I realized as I was, went to money coaching school, because there's actual money coaching school. It's called the Money Coaching Institute. It's in California. And when I got my certification, I realized I had been money coaching in many relationships, but particularly in my first business. And I just kind of went, whoa, like I didn't see it as a strength. I just assumed everybody knew how to have this conversation about money, or I just assumed that you could figure this out. Like a lot of us in life, we're very good at understanding other people's problems. But when it comes to our own, we are clueless, hopeless, and we really need a guide or a coach or somebody to help us along to be like, no, not to call you dumb, but no, that's not actually how it works. And you go, okay. So it's really that. And it's been my mission and my passion to really wake other people up who want it, who are like, listen, I'm tired of playing this money game. It's like, that's because you only have learned money games in your head and they force you to lose, so you can't win. Mm-hmm. So whether you have an emotional issue that's severe, like your mother's estate has been liquidated by a family member, you can't change it. Or it's like, man, I just want to make over 5,000 in a month. I would be elated in my business. And yet you don't have the time or the energy or the money to do that. Oh, why is that? Or I've been doing all this law of attraction manifesting and I'm going nowhere. Yeah, because you can be good for a couple of days and then you're going to go right back to where you were. And that's why law of attraction work is powerful, but it's hard to maintain. So you've got to learn to work with your emotions, because your emotions are your best asset to rewiring your money brain. Because in the money brain world that I live in, the left side of our money brain really focuses on data analysis. And it comes from often what? The midbrain, which is about fear and survival. Oh my God. But it's the right side of our money brain that actually can access the creativity. It can access the navigation powers, the activation powers, the empathy that we often need for ourselves and other people to maybe forgive them, or to accept, like I said, oh, I realize this is not the yard I need to be in. These are not friends. I'm going to leave because it's not my yard. Like having that, I'm not going to take that personally. I didn't know what I know now. And being okay with that. And then going, how can I wake up every day if I own a business or if I'm in a job of like, I'm going to make this a good day. I'm going to see my success and I'm going to just go for it. And it works out. Instead of like, oh, Gabrielle, my boss is terrible. Oh my God. I mean, I had a litany of bad bosses. I got a couple of nice ones in there, by the way, that I loved, but I never got them for very long because of what? Instability of work that I have found, that people are either very busy trying to social climb or get to the very tippy top, or worse, they just are like, oh, I had a health issue. I couldn't keep doing this nonsense. So I left.
I heard a lot in what you shared that stood out to me. The first was a while back when you'd said, or it was probably a handful of minutes back when you had said these kinds of things happen not because you're a bad person or you deserve it, but almost like I heard there's a lesson that needs to be learned. This is something that needs to be overcome in your continued growth. And then another thing that I heard that really stood out to me is when I will have to be completely honest, when I first heard like things like psychology of money, mindset around money, all I'm thinking about is like scarcity versus abundance, which is definitely a thing. But when you said someone who's really in a negative place, and I do this kind of like motion of being like inward focused and making small of oneself, that extends to other areas, right? I think like someone who's in a bad place mentally or emotionally is likely not thriving in different branches of their life because of this internal pain or obstacle, something that hasn't been worked through or nurtured or held and overcome. And I see that in like my side of like professional side, leadership, like team leadership, self-leadership. It's the same thing. If someone hasn't done internal work to overcome, whether it's like very obvious or like kind of below the waterline of like maybe unaware of these like self-imposed barriers to success, whether that's something that's, easier or more like needs professional help to overcome, it's going to impact all of these different areas of life as well. And so, of course it affects money as well. Like, of course. And then when I put it that way, I'm like, oh yeah, duh. So that's really fascinating. And especially I really appreciate, and I want to sit with and come back to this aspect of feeling taken advantage of by someone in your own family.
Yes.
I think is something that a lot of people can resonate with, whether it's about money or not.
Yes.
And especially for better or worse, I call it my empathy monster. I can sometimes just be so empathetic and just really feel others. And it works well in some ways and it is really challenging in others. But the empathy side of me is like, when a person passes, I hear so many stories of contention over estate.
Yes.
And one family member trying to take advantage of another one. And I even have family members who, like, when one person would pass, somebody would be like, you owe me money now. And it's like, what? I have family relationships that were torn apart over a handful of thousands of dollars, like less than $5,000 after a passing.
Yep.
And it just baffles me that, you know, I see money as this, it's a thing, right? Like in a way, it's a made up thing that we've used to create value, to exchange value and energy, right? In a way, right? But then at the same time, that same thing can somehow has so much power over people.
Yeah.
That it can like cause these ruptures. Like it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I love how you've used that, where I've seen, and all of that to say, there have been so many situations that I've seen, experienced, witnessed, heard about, that it's like, that has been the divider and that's it.
Yeah.
Done. End of story. And you chose to rewrite that story.
Yes.
And so what was that experience like for you? Because there have to have been moments where you had like different beliefs coming up, maybe about this other person or yourself, and like butting up against those.
The place that I had a hard time forgiving was the fact that I ignored the red flags that were happening. So I missed a lot of things. And what helped me heal, because the way I always like to say it is, money is just a story you give it. Money is just money. It's just a thing. Doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're like, I'm rich all the time. That's great. You're rich all the time. Or if you're like, that son of a bitch, you know, like, pardon my language, but you know, yeah, that's a real story. So what helped me heal was the fact that, you know, I missed stuff that I was going to take as deep, profound lessons, that I may not be able to spot every liar from here on out, but I'm going to make some serious course corrections. And I'm going to ask more questions. And if things seem a little vague, especially when it comes to money or it comes to health, I'm going to ask more questions. And if I don't feel like I'm getting what I need, I might choose to leave the relationship for my sanity, because that matters to me more than any money on the planet. I need to be sane. That's insanity is not my thing. It's just not something I aspire to. It's not one of my money values, as I like to say. Which is why I gave that example of the friendship of just sort of like, oh, you have lied. You both have lied to me at a deep level, in my opinion, by misrepresenting your level of friendship and your level of relationship. And that there's this, you know, push between the two of you, a push pull that I don't care. I don't even care about. Like, I don't treat people like that. That I go, oh, this is not for me. It still hurts, but it's not for me. And that's okay. I'm going to allow this rejection to be what I need it to be, which is the exit. And so what I did, you know, for me is that I had to hire a lawyer for my sanity and for my heart to keep it from not wanting to turn black, because I was so angry and so upset about what had happened. And that helped me, because then I could be very blunt with my attorney and be like, let me tell you what this guy did. And and it was just one of those powerful things. So for instance, I will give to me was the thing that I just kind of like this is why I have an attorney. So I was given instructions on where my mother was buried, right? This was technically their responsibility. They were supposed to get it done. They did, but not exactly. And so what happened is I arrived on a Sunday to the cemetery because it was a day off. I could go, and I could not find my mother. So I ran through a graveyard crying, trying to find her. Nobody knows that kind of pain except me, but I don't put that out like, and therefore you will, no, I just know that pain, and I know how deeply that cut. I was able to find out the next day that thankfully she was buried, which was supposed to be. But unfortunately, this person didn't bother to pay the bill, even though it was their responsibility for a headstone. And you just kind of go, that's the person, that's who they are. Mm-hmm. And so it's like learning to accept that I don't control people. When people have really nasty habits, they're going to continue them. Like, this is something that they've done. Like, we found out later, they did a series of things to other people that we didn't know about at the time. And most likely my mother would have covered for him because we didn't know. So you learn, and then you move forward. But I remember calling my attorney and having her go, are you kidding me? Are you sure you were in the right place? I said, yes. And I verified it with the cemetery. And it wasn't close, by the way. It was quite a drive. It wasn't like, oh, I just went up the street. It was an all-day thing. And so I remember her reporting back to me what their attorney had said. And their attorney said, we have they couldn't even defend it. They just said, we're very sorry. We did not know that this had occurred. And they said they didn't know that this had happened. And I go, it's a lie. And I knew it was, but I'm super glad that I had somebody witness what happened, which was my attorney. And I was super happy that, his attorney was notified. By the way, this person isn't as nice as you think they are. And I'm really glad that was conveyed because I needed that. I needed somebody to know that.
Yeah. And what I hear is surrender and not staying stuck and continuing to move forward and move past making sure you're not alone. And I think it's hard because there are these different sides that I care very deeply about making sure that people aren't judged by a bad thing that they did. But then that also doesn't mean be blind and be taken advantage of when somebody is repetitively doing something bad. There's also a need for holding those boundaries that you said, holding people accountable for being authentic and honest and open. And if they're not in alignment with those things that you care about, then to say, yeah, I think there's a need for separation. And I think that's such a hard balance to have.
And when do you get an advocate? When do you hire somebody to, say, hey, by the way, because what happened is they were then tasked to go fix the whole little, headstone issue, right? Little thing that it was, right? Well, they promptly fired their attorney. And I was like, okay, good. I'm glad we're clear. I'm glad I have this clarity because there's an old, what's her name? Oh, Elizabeth Gilbert quote that she quoted this woman who ended up later becoming her girlfriend, who I think her name was Rhea, and she ended up unfortunately passing away of cancer. But in her book, they were just really good friends. And she quoted her truth is the thing that will still stand as everything blows up. And that has really deeply impacted me in a good way of you can tell me anything, but when this all blows up, the truth will be known. The truth was known in that moment that I needed, that they lied severely. And they were finally shown for being the leper that they were. And I needed that to be seen. I really needed that to be seen. And I felt better knowing that my attorney was if there was any way I could have done this differently, I would have. I had no idea. And quite frankly, their attorney was lied to as well. So again, it wasn't I accepted the truth. The truth is we all accepted on good faith. I went, I did what I was supposed to do. And then to find out it's worse because this person only knows how to make it worse. That's a fact for me.
Yeah. And yet you still moved forward to try and take this experience and make it something that can positively influence people.
Yeah. I mean, one of the craziest,
so that's wonderful.
Yeah. One of the craziest statistics I heard about financial exploitation in families is it's at least 30%. We know it's more, but families don't want to always share. That's why you get these conversations you owe me money. And that may very well be true. We just don't know the full story.
And I would say, I'm curious of your take on it, based on my experience, that those interactions that I've been a fly on the wall of or heard of it or experienced myself is usually out of scarcity and out of fear.
Yeah.
And even people being afraid of being taken advantage of, are then taking advantage of others. And it's extremely ironic. Is that consistent with what you've experienced, or that's just what I've seen?
So what happens sometimes in money psychology, to get a little more specific, is that if you see yourself as a victim, you will pretend, oh my God, the world is hard, and we'll tell everybody. And it may be hard in certain instances. If you ended up with a terrible medical condition, you're still recovering from COVID, I could go on and on. Those are real things. And you may not feel like you're a winner today. That's real. But when you use that for financial excuses, well, I can't possibly take care of myself, or my business will never take care of me, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then that's what happens, is that you take on this thing of woe is me. And then the minute you might have an opportunity to do something different, meaning you could actually help another person or you could support them, and you're like, no, it's my money, I deserve it. That's another money psychology that stepped in to basically become what? The perpetrator. And we all have that ability, especially when it comes to money. And just so you know, victim and perpetrator, they never get what they want. They're always blaming people. They, will manipulate and lie to the bitter end. But I will tell you, it does not matter. What matters is what you choose with your money psychology. That's what matters, because you can't change liars and thieves. That's not going to happen. But it does help for you to be like, I'm going to set up some boundaries so any more financial parasites show up in my life. I'm going to be having like a little screening contest now, and I'm going to be checking stuff. And if I want you to handle my finances, you're going to have to pass a financial background check. And I'm going to make sure that you say who you are, and I'm going to have a backup that can actually maintain the money. And then all of a sudden it's a different conversation, because you've taken it from to no. The standard is here, and I expect it to be met. And then the people who are no good, will not help you, will leave. And thank God. Because nobody needs that. Nobody needs that. You just go, yep, this is not my yard. I'm going to leave. Thank you.
Yeah. Those boundaries. Ugh. So I'm going to ask you the same questions that I invite everyone to share is, how can your story create connection for others who might resonate with something that you shared?
Yeah. So one of the things that I did as part of losing both my parents to Alzheimer's is I've created a caregiver conference, and I'm doing my second annual this year in November. And why was that? It wasn't to sit there and point my finger at all the caregivers and going, you're doing it wrong, which is what a lot of us who have been caregivers have been told. It was to give you more time and information, and to have a better understanding of what it is that you need to do to take care of yourself and your family. Because, when we're forced to be all of a sudden like a caregiver, and we have a job or we have a family, like, it doesn't always work. And so you need to figure out a strategy that's going to work better. It doesn't have to be perfect, better for you. You need somebody looking out for you and the family, not just somebody going, well, it's all about the sick person. No. Who else is looking around for you? Who can you go to get the support? Because there's a lot of caregivers that refuse to go to a caregiver support group. That's often been it. Like, don't you want to go to a caregiver support group? Well, I mean, maybe, but a lot of times that overwhelms other caregivers, and that doesn't help them. So I've taken a novel approach of like, what works? When the pavement hits the road, I want to offer caregivers what works. And what I've learned is that it's other caregivers like me. It is people who work specifically in the caregiving industry that are not selling drugs, thank God, who are not trying to get them into a very expensive residential home. These are people who are like, here's how you make your home work. Here's how you can use technology to be a little bit of an assist, but it's not going to solve everything. This is how you get it. This is how you actually find the right caregiver, so they don't steal from you and they don't make your life a living hell. And they don't show up, for work. And then you're like, oh my God, I hired somebody. Well, you had a checklist. You didn't have a connection. That's huge. That's like one of the number one reasons that people hire caregivers and they leave, or they're done, or they don't like them. It's because there's no connection. And so these agencies are trying to find human beings that are good-hearted, most of them, very kind, but they may not speak English as their first language, or they do. People are then like, I need you to take care of me. And it's like, that's not what the caregiver's here for. You can go get your own help. Yeah.
So what I hear is seek connection.
Yes.
Seek support. For someone who's listening that might be in a similar place to where you were at any of these moments, what would you say to your past self?
Well, for sure, what I would tell myself about the forgiveness piece, and that is betrayal is a human emotion, and we all have to experience betrayal, and either betrayal overtakes us or we learn to make it into something joyful, which I did. I learned how to do that. It wasn't easy, but I found my way. I would say that money is the easiest thing to fix on this freaking planet. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to fix the easy stuff. I mean, the hard stuff, I'll let somebody else handle. And if you seek connection and support, you might be surprised who will step forward and who walks away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. What do you feel you needed the most in some of these different moments to feel more connected to the people around you?
I need people not to question my sanity. I'll never forget running through that graveyard, and people were like, I called all my friends. I'm like, I can't find her. And they're like, are you sure you're in the right place? And I was like, yeah. And so, but they had never experienced this level of financial exploitation themselves. So they didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to help me. So that's part of the things that I really needed was I needed somebody to be like, I want you to call your attorney. I want you to contact this, company. I'm on my way to your house, or when are you going to be home? I'm going to give you a hug. I wish people would have stepped in with more like, I'm going to find a way to help you because you deserve it. Instead of like, I don't know. I can't help you with that. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
The world is much harder than we need it to be, but for sure, if stuff is that hard, we need to take care of ourselves, but we need to also, how can I help you? What do you need immediately? Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry. Do you just need me to listen? I'll listen.
I love that. Yeah. Instead of question, like you said, I just needed someone to hear me out, to listen, to hold space for me, not to be like, are you sure you're in the right cemetery?
Newsflash, I was standing right in the right spot where she was supposed to be. And I did find out later, oh, she really is there. So that was achieved. But, the other pieces weren't. And that's major trauma that was caused that day, which I am happy to say I have healed from. That was traumatic.
Let's tune up the empathy, the compassion, the heart, and let's tune down the judgment.
Yes.
Now for anyone who is like, has made it this far somehow, and they're like, I can't resonate with a single thing that you have said. How can your story?
Thanks. I think you're in the wrong yard.
But if they've made it this far, how can your story create connection for people who have completely different perceptions and experiences?
So part of the reason I call myself a money expert is that I've dealt with all different kinds of money psychologies, and I know how to help people move the ball, get themselves going and keep the momentum. You don't have to have a horrible, tragic story. You could have just a simple one, which is like, I just would like to have a conversation without fighting with my spouse. That's a great one. That's an easy one to fix if you want to fix it. It's an easy one to fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. And I think what I hear in that and what I feel having had difficult money conversations with my spouse is the money fear and the money scarcity came from me.
Yes.
And I was bringing that into our conversations.
Exactly.
And so then, like you were saying with money psychology, you come from these different mindsets. Well, everyone around you is a mirror of how you show up. Like if we go into it with that, then me coming from a scarcity, from a fear, from a panicked, anxious, all of these like really intense emotions, it's like as if that's going to create a positive result.
And that's how a lot of us have been taught to talk about money is you go in there, you come in, they're powerful, you come in strong, you knock them off their chairs and you tell them exactly what's going on with the money. And it's like, geez, that's pretty combative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
This was really, really wonderful. And I hope that, it was really nice to do a little touch on money psychology, something that, before meeting you, I had never heard of, but absolutely makes sense. We have so many judgments and such about money, and to touch on friendships and how to be resilient through challenging situations and set up boundaries those are some important takeaways for people. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And your vulnerability. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we call it?
I would just say whatever's going on in terms of the money piece, it will always get better if you choose to find a way. You're like, I'm going to find a way through this, because that was my mantra for a long time. I will find a way through this, and it got better.
I would like to yes and that in that anything in life,
yes,
actually, if you choose to have a clear intention on making it better, you'll find a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love it. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Chef's kisses. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode with Jeannie and Gabby here.
Yeah. And we're going to keep this conversation going. So Rowan and I are going to talk about, different themes and dynamics and narratives and phrasing that we heard, and kind of like what popped up for us and what our experience was listening to it and things that we noticed. So we're going to keep this conversation going on Patreon. And so if you're at the $5 a month level or up, you'll have access to that conversation as a bonus episode exclusive for our patrons. So go ahead and join Patreon.
Have a great weekend with that, and take care of yourself, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. See you on Monday. Thanks.
Thanks.